Today, I have a wonderful guest on my show, Dr. Brandon Owen, the CEO and founder of KLOwen Braces. And he is a practicing orthodontist at Owen Orthodontics Center in Lakeway, Texas. He is the winner of the 2019 Ortho Innovator Award from the American Association of Orthodontics and has 8 original patents as well as dozens of continuation patents. He is an ABO board certified orthodontist and is a member of the prestigious Angle Society. He is also a consultant to more than a dozen companies in the digital orthodontic space. He also does research at the University of Alberta on the OSIM, where he is an adjunct faculty member. His company, KLOwen Braces, is named after his oldest son, Keller Logan Owen, who passed away suddenly in 2011. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Brandon Owen of KLOwen Braces. All right, everybody, I am so excited to introduce you to Dr. Brandon Owen. He is the CEO and founder of KLOwen Brackets, and I just am so happy to have you on the show today. And I just really want you to dive in and tell me a little bit about how did you get to this point in your life right here? Because you aren't a newbie at being an orthodontist. And, you know, I know that you've been practicing for a while and you found this pinch point in our industry. And I think this is the favorite thing that I love about doing this podcast is talking to doctors like yourself that said, you know what, Jill, it's not enough to just be an orthodontist. Like that isn't hard enough already. And, you know, to do all the things that you've done just from an accolade standpoint there, but then to say, you know, there's something that I think our industry is missing, and I think I can contribute to do something different. So can you just kind of tell us a little bit for those of us out there that don't know your backstory, don't know how KLOwen came to fruition? I'm gonna let you just jump in and give us a little of that story.
Yeah, so it was really interesting, you know, graduating in 2006 from orthodontic residency. I purchased a practice right out of school. And it was right when, you know, Invisalign was really kind of coming up. It was actually when Ortho Clear came out. And I almost bought a practice that was almost exclusively Ortho Clear. And then Invisalign went through that lawsuit. And I'm like, thank goodness I didn't, because the few cases that I had was a nightmare to wait for that conversion to happen. And the thing I was finding with my aligner cases, and it was probably my naivety, and obviously I think there's been so much progression in the way we not only the technology, but also the way that we've learned how to use the technology with aligners, where it's much more predictable now. And we've got some great teachers in this space. But I was really frustrated with all the results. Like that, every single aligner case, I'd look at the end, and again, this is probably big on me, and be like, man, will you please let me just put braces on for 2 or 3 months, make it look a little bit better? And everybody would say no every single time. And I had a rep from GAC walk into my office, and she showed me these lingual brackets. And I was like, well, shoot, that's got to be better than what I can get with, you know, what I'm seeing with aligners at the time, at least in my hands. And so I just started I taught myself how to do lingual. I did indirect bonding for everything anyway. And so it's pretty easy for me to pre-shape the wires, and I was doing some really cool cases with it. And the regional sales manager said, hey, you're our biggest purchaser of Innovation L brackets in the US. And so what are you doing? Can I see some of your cases? So I started talking to them, and they saw what I was doing, and they're like, wow, this is really impressive. And they invited me over to France and kind of offered me the position after that meeting in France, looking at their kind of full service lingual system.
Wow.
Kind of being their lead lingual consultant,
Sure.
lead clinical consultant for lingual orthodontics. And so I got to go over to Europe every summer, and usually it was once or twice a year, and I'd go lecture 4 or 5 places and come back, and I'm like, this is super cool. And then they were kind of starting to see that as I was helping them with the digital lingual product that they were working on, they said, well, you really get this digital stuff really well. Can you help us? Would you mind taking over and helping us lead our clinical development for digital as well? And so I was like, well, I don't even know what that really means. And it was, I was a nobody. I still maybe am a nobody, but it was super fun to kind of be included in that product development cycle where I was meeting with engineers and MBAs on a weekly basis. And I started trying everything: digital, indirect bonding, lingual, labial, you name it. I was first one to do like in-office 3D printed indirect bonding. It was a terrible process, by the way. We used the only software that was out. It was the only FDA cleared material that you could put in the patient's mouth was implant guides, and it would stick to the composite. And so I'd have to like crack off these hard plastic trays. So anyway, it was just, I just like dabbling and trying to find out how do we improve this process and all these various things. And so basically GAC Dentsply was ready to build my brackets. They went through a CEO turnover, and as soon as that CEO left and a lot of the other executives left at the same time, the new team that came in didn't want to put my priority at the top of the project list. So went out to some of the other big companies, had offers from 3 of the big 4 to basically become their lead of digital orthodontics as well. And I love the product development cycle, but just couldn't agree on, I think, terms that were fair, because I basically had all the patents done. It was a silver platter solution where here you go. I think this is going to be huge. And, it just couldn't get them to come to what I thought was a fair market for a royalty rate. So I ended up doing it myself. And Wonderful. What I found was indirect bonding is great. Digital indirect bonding is a little bit better. But if you're using a one-size-fits-all system, even if you get the braces positioned perfectly, the only thing that you're really going to dial in well is the second order, the torque slop and the in and out, that because no one has the perfect shaped teeth that fit with that one-size-fits-all prescription. Means you're still going to have to go. And if you want to get a great result, and I'm, ABO angle, I really care about like, man, I want to be like meticulously good. Yeah. And it was always a sacrifice even with indirect bonding. I'm like, how come I can't get these elements controlled? And I'd see it in things like Harmony and Incognito, that what was possible if you fill the slot and you have these custom brackets. But what I also saw was that it was really expensive. The technology, the way they were deploying the technology, is the price point just to buy those custom systems was $2,000+ per case. Right. And I said, well, how can I actually make this something that's going to be meaningful and get my share of digital up across my practice, not just on a couple of patients here and there. And Insignia, we'd always say, hey, if you want to do the custom, it's going to cost $600 more. And we'd have 2 patients out of the 20 starts or 25 starts that we have each month choosing that option. And so the quagmire for me was, well, shoot, I'm running an analog schedule, even though I have this digital technology. And the problem was that the gap between the time to fabricate, 6-7 weeks for turnaround time, the cost to fabricate, all of the value was getting diminished and exhausted, not by the company selling the appliance and not by the orthodontist, but it was all in the manufacturing. They're selling a $1,000 set of braces and it costs them $950 to make those braces. So there was very little left because there was just so much that was exhausted in the process. Yeah. And so I always like to use the shoe analogy, is how kind of my epiphany came. I like to say it's optimally engineered. So we don't need to necessarily make a custom shoe for your right foot and your left foot. And most people wouldn't buy that shoe if it cost $1,000 and took 7 weeks to make. And that's what, a lot of these systems is we're going to measure your right foot and we're going to actually manufacture things that are just for you. And on the other end of the spectrum, I think traditional braces is like having a size 15 and that's all you've got. And we're going to sit down with some foam and as a sculptor, I'm going to sculpt the foam so it fits as a conduit between the size 15 shoe. And that's neither one of those models. Yeah, right. Exactly. And so that was where it was for me is, well, what if I can walk into a shoe store and for $100 get a nice pair of shoes in a size 9.5. And by choosing the right shape of shoe, I get 95% of the customization by choosing which shoe do I want out of the ones that are on the table and the boxes here. And then when I tighten the laces, I actually get 100% custom fit. So the last 5%. And so the teeth don't know if there's 1/10 of a millimeter of glue or 0.010 of a millimeter of glue. If you have a bracket, an adhesive, and then a wire that fits that bracket perfectly, you can move the teeth to 100% custom setup with a really good fit. And so that's what our model is. And what I'm really passionate about is keeping our price point sub $500. So there isn't that thought anymore of, should I do digital on this patient or not? Is it worth it or not? The answer is, we're going to save you enough visits. So at $500 or less, it's always worth it. You're actually leaving money on the table if you don't use it. And so
right. I love
that was kind of the roundabout way that we kind of came to be.
Yeah. And I love that. And, I love that you took this idea that, I can do this better. I can see a need in our industry that's moving beyond the one size fits all bracket, customizing it to what you're saying, let's get almost there and then fine tune it in the end. But then also I think the key that's so important here is making it affordable, because we all, as business owners, we all have this, overhead piece that we're trying to meet. And it's great to have a completely customized system, maybe at $2,000, $3,000 a pop. But what is that doing to our bottom line? And, and is that really our ultimate goal? Yes, we want to have, some shared chair time and, ease of schedules and all of that. But ultimately too, we don't want to be drowning in overhead. And so I love that was something that you saw, as part of this, as well as, I want to make this something that, that my peers, different people are going to be able to hold on to. And I just kind of want to talk about that a little bit, because as you know, we've done a startup together. You've been a startup
Absolutely.
doctor. But let's just kind of talk about that, because I think that's probably the scariest thing, or the biggest question that I hear from a lot of my younger docs that are either doing acquisitions or doing startups, or even docs that are existing that are like, Jill, I think I need to change. I think I need to do something different than the norm. I'm beyond the grad orders and, just the same thing we've done for the last year after year after year. So let's talk just a little bit about, if you were a new doctor looking at this, or you're a doc that's going to be moving into a practice and, you can, I always tell my docs, if you're going to make change in an acquisition, do it in the beginning, because rip the Band-Aid off once and get it over with. So can you kind of talk to me about kind of some of your philosophies within KLOwen and how you guys are kind of helping, doctors that are wanting to get started with this, and, maybe the differences and what a startup or an acquisition doc may be looking at versus an existing doc for that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And yes, since I got to do the startup in the last couple of years as well, I know firsthand how challenging that whole role is. And, I think with any technology, so many people just buy into technology because they see everybody else buying into technology. And I am so against that. You really have to do, I think, a thorough ROI and kind of assessment on anything you're looking to bring in. And so, if you're going to spend $450 on a KLOwen case, are you going to see, or you could buy a $150 set of brackets down the road, are you going to see a $300 value add by using this or not? And, the quick, simple equation that I've used to kind of articulate this is, and this isn't the only one by any means, but okay, so if you have a typical office, and we have the calculator that kind of shows what you can even type in your own overhead and everything else, but it's going to cost you $150 to $250 every time a patient sits down in your chair.
Yep.
As a doctor.
Yep.
So, when you add up your practice management software and your lighting and your facility space and your team overhead, that's kind of the range, right? Yep. So 150 to 250 bucks. And so if we can save you 2 visits, right? If we can eliminate $300 in visit overhead alone, then okay, you've hit your break-even point. And we had our first 100 case submission doctors about a year and a half ago. So the first 100 cases, that the doctors that submitted 100 cases to us, we actually put them on Gage's platform, and we had them measure what they did before versus after. And the range of those 4 practices was: one saved 32% reduced office visits.
Wow.
one saved 33%, one saved 41%, one saved 44%. And we didn't, this is before we even taught them, here's actually how you use the custom system.
Yes.
It's like, hey, we got this bracket, try it out, see what you think. And so, when you look at, okay, this is 6 to 10 visits saved,
mm-hmm.
and the math gets a little bit funny because as you compress the number of visits, the per visit overhead goes down and it's skewed a little bit. But the bottom line is there is a 3 to 4 to 5x ROI just with saved office visits alone.
Right.
And so that $300 more that you spent more than paid for itself. You got at least 2 to 3x out. I think for a new practice, especially, this is the issue, I think, with like aligners, especially if those heavy lab bills. If you want to offer a $500 down payment and you're paying $1,100, $1,200 out, or
$1,800.
let's just be kind of nice and say, hey, we'll use one of the more economical aligner systems. So say you start 10 cases in the month of June with aligners and you've offered $500 down because you want to keep that barrier to entry of the patient low as you're starting a practice. You've gone in the whole $7,000 that month.
Yes.
In the hole. And then if you have another month, another $7,000 in the hole, and you're going to get to that recoup part. But what I love about being sub $500 is I think that's a threshold where if you can offer a $500 down payment, you're going to get the patient to say yes pretty easily.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed.
And so the fun thing for me is you're not like a new grad order where you're paying $20,000 for this block of brackets that you may or may not use this year. The patient pays you the $500 down and you pay the $450 the following month. So you're at a net 30, and no matter what, you're up for that month, right? Month one, you're ahead. And so that, if you really think of it from a business sense perspective, that's crazy impactful. The cash flow is such a critical part. I think it's one of the most overlooked parts of the orthodontic business model, especially in the startup space.
Yes.
Or in changing to a new model, you can really get yourself into trouble quickly.
Yeah.
If you don't manage that well.
And I talk about this all the time, having, been consulted with me. This is probably one of the biggest things that I talk to my startups about. And I love that, you get that, but also when you were setting this up, that was in the forefront of your mind too, because it may not be such an impact if you're a $3 or a $4 million practice and, your AR is where it needs to be. And, your delinquencies are less than 5% and you're just trucking along. But, as I tell all my docs, especially in your first, 1 to 3 years in business, cash is king, and that cash flow is so important. So I love the way you broke that down, and I hope somebody, was able to take something out of that or rewind this and, listen to it again, because that cash, it is so important, that cash flow component. And if we aren't going upside down, we just know that price point is $500, for most people to start treatment. We aren't going backwards. We're able to submit. We're able to get our case. We're going to keep a good cash flow in the practice. It just makes sense. And the thing I'm always telling my docs too is, why are we doing these big bracket orders and having this inventory sitting on our shelves when, working with a company like yours or, the ones out there, but especially, yours, where you order and you go as you need it. And I think that's the beauty of it too. It's just changing our mindset and how we think about the bracket systems that we're doing. And then you compound on the customization component of it and efficiency. I love it. I love it. Yeah.
That's been super special to see it, come to fruition in all these various scenarios. And, it hasn't put people in trouble, because I knew a lot of people that were trying to get the aligner chair up.
Yeah.
And they went through a couple of months where they were like, is my business going to be okay? And this is before I think they knew better. And I think there's been some things in place to help mitigate that risk a little bit. But like I said, there's a lot of people that got themselves into trouble, even with busy offices, because they were trying to make that digital conversion. And you just have to really be careful.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk just a little bit about, let's say we've got an existing practice and they say, All right. I hear, Brandon, what you're saying. Okay, Jill, I hear what you're saying. And I think this is the move I want to make this next year. I'm going to pick a custom system, and it's going to be KLOwen. What do practices need to be thinking about as far as getting their teams behind this? And maybe some of the systems, because I always think we should plan, implement, and then go for it, right? So can you kind of give us some thoughts or ideas on best practices on what you're seeing if somebody, because it's usually, I'm going to take a stab at this, but usually it's not our docs that have a problem implementing. It's the team saying, wait a minute, you haven't thought about this, and this, and this, and this, and you don't know how it's going to affect me here, here, and here, and here. So let's just dive into that. I know it's a little bit messy, but I think everybody wants to know this, right?
No, 100%. And so it's funny because I just had this conversation with my whole executive team on Wednesday. Is the doctors have bought in, they get what we're doing.
Yeah.
The thing that gets people to stop doing the system is the staff having issues with it. And what I can tell you is that I learned what not to do for the first 2 years of the company, which is, really we had a team of 3 people for the first kind of year and a half, a team of 4 by year 2. And so it was really, we just didn't have a lot of bandwidth. Here's the braces, good luck. We're going to try and do some videos so that you can watch. And it's not enough to get teams implemented. So early this year, we spent, a lot of money on having these basically practice success specialists. So they come train the clinical part, they come train the software part. If there's any questions, you can get on the phone with them that day. So we really realized you have to make a huge investment in training support, because if you don't have that, if the assistants feel like they don't have that support organization, they're going to very quickly say, I don't like this. And rather than trying to figure out and problem solve. So the early adopters, like the orthodontists, they're like, nope, we're doing this no matter what, because they really just get the benefit. And, I always like to kind of say is assistants hated doing attachments for aligners the first couple of years that we tried to implement that. But at some point we realized that, hey, aligners are really efficient. So you're learning this, right? You don't have a choice. You're learning this.
Yep.
And it's much the same, I think, with custom. The good news now is if you know the aligner workflow, you know everything you need to know to use KLOwen. Right? Is you scan the teeth, and you submit it, just like you do with an aligner. The doctor's going to get basically a viewer where they can manipulate and move the teeth in the software and hit approve. So you've got an approval software, just like with the aligners. You get a box sent to you with all the braces and indirect bonding, just like an attachment template. Here you go. It's ready to go. All you have to do is put on the glue, seat it on the teeth. When you peel the tray off, instead of having attachments on the teeth, you're going to have brackets. And guess what? Once the braces are on the teeth, you got this, right? You know how to do wire changes.
Now you're riding the bike. Now you're riding the bike, right? It's easy. It's easy from that point. That's it.
So
that's
I think
great.
The good news is we have that parallel already. It's not like reinventing the wheel. Listen, you guys already have all these systems in place. Now it's just doing it for fixed appliances and for those other cases. And that I think has helped a lot. But I think the other major key is it's not just about what's in it for the patient and what's in it for the doctor. But now every time we go into an office, it's what's in it for, hey, you're the treatment coordinator. What's in this system for you? Why is this going to help you?
Yeah.
Hey, you're the clinical team. Why is this going to make your lives better? Hey, front desk, why is this? And so we spend a lot of time on the front end, making sure they really get the value. And do you guys realize how easy your lives are going to be in 6 months once you get this ramped up?
Mm-hmm.
There may be a couple of stumbles along the way, but in 6 months, your lives are going to be so much better. So I think really framing that for the assistant, for the front desk, for the treatment coordinator is also helping with that conversion. But really, it's about having someone that they can turn to and, hey, I had the bracket fall off. What happened? And they can get on the phone that day. And our team's like, well, let me come out for your next bonding. And that investment, I think, has helped a lot with retention. The tray material's gotten better. So we've learned a lot of what not to do. And it's not because we didn't want to do those things. It's just from a bandwidth perspective, we didn't have enough people to do it. And anyone who tried us a year ago, the experience is it's a totally different system this year than it was last year. And I'll tell you, it's going to be a totally better experience next year than it is today. And that's the fun about this innovation is when I was with the bigger companies, it would take us 2 years to make a tiny little modification. Here, every month, there's leapfrogs forward in terms of what we're able to do.
Yeah, I love that. And I think something I just kind of pulled out after listening to you is I think so many times that when we implement a new system into our offices, we think that it's just one core group of our team that it impacts. And I love that you guys are taking a little bit more of a holistic approach to, because we think new bracket system, new digital system, it's the clinic and the doctor. That's the only people that it impacts. And I love that as a company, you guys are kind of taking that bigger step back and saying, wait a minute, there are more people impacted by that because gosh, if we can have our front office team not having to bring people back every 4 to 6 weeks. And now they're, bringing them back maybe every 8 to 10 or 10 to 12, especially if you're using some type of a monitoring system. And, and now the impact of the phones ringing is going down and, the impact of all of that, like, that just naturally makes the front office environment a happier environment. And our treatment coordinator that can tell somebody, hey, you don't have to come in 24 times. You get to come in 12 times over the length of your treatment or whatnot. I mean, I love that you guys have just kind of taken that bigger approach because it is so much more than just what's happening in the clinic. And I think getting teams on board. And if I've got teams that are listening, if you can hear this and understand that it's not just, the clinical team gets something new to deal with. it does really help all of us. I love that. I love that you guys have identified that and are working towards, that culture. I think that's what we're looking for in our offices, right? Is everybody, having a good office culture. And that even goes to the systems and that we're choosing to put into our office to make everybody's lives easier, not just the doctors, not just the clinical teams, everybody's lives better. So I love that. I really, really, that's great.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's just kind of talk about if a practice were going to implement something like this, like they said, okay, you guys are selling me. I think this is what I want to do. Like, where do they go? What do they do? When they're looking at implementing, KLOwen, where do they start first? I mean, I know we kind of just talked about this, but, is it, you want to just kind of elaborate a little bit on that? Because I think that's the hard part. Where do we start?
So I think, and this is a critical thing that we've learned too, is we don't want every customer right now. Mm-hmm. We want customers that are ready to really put forth the effort so it's going to be successful. Like we actually talk people out of starting with us because we know it's going to be tough on their team or themselves or whatever it might be. So, really you go to the website, it'll kind of point you to whichever sales rep you have, and then they're going to sit down and say, okay, we're going to need, if we want to implement, I need an hour with your whole team so we can kind of talk about what this is and why everybody's going to benefit in the office. I'm going to need time with you, doctor, to learn the software and get everything implemented. I need time with your treatment coordinator. And we're going to come out and we're going to train you and we're going to help you bond and you're going to get proficient at that very well. And we can come back out again and support you. But we need you to commit to doing at least 5 cases a month for the first 2 or 3 months, because if we don't, your team's never going to actually learn. If you go 4 weeks between your first and your second bonding, and we came out and trained you how to do the bonding, your team is going to forget.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you're going to do the second bonding and you're going to get a whole bunch of brackets that don't fall off. And you're going to say, the system doesn't work. It's like, well, no, you have to get that muscle memory and at least get a couple people on your team to where they really have that system dialed in. And we also want to get to a threshold where you can actually start feeling at least a little bit of the impact on your practice. So let's say you start 30 patients a month and only one of them that month was a custom case. Mm-hmm. So when that patient comes back in 6 weeks and all of those visits, instead of having to do repos and wire bends, those are all just a 30-second check. Well, in your schedule, you may catch up 5 or 10 minutes, but you're not going to realize that that really helped you.
Yeah.
But if you have 5 patients that day coming in that were accustomed, and you're like, oh my goodness, holy cow, I actually have. So the big thing that we found, and it was actually panic mode from almost all of our earliest users, was they were in the clinic and there was all this free time on the schedule, and they were used to being just slammed. And they started freaking out. And it was around month 6 and 7 when a lot of those detailing bend appointments really would start kicking in the repos. And they'd say, oh my gosh, where are all of our patients today? And they're like, well, we've been up 20% every month over month for the last year. We're doing great financially. And they realize they called it the plastic assistant, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing that what people who really kind of go heavy in with Invisalign is like, wow, I have actually time to get some stuff done through the day.
Right.
And it's not the plastic assistant, it's the digital assistant.
Yeah.
It's not about plastic versus metal, it's the digital assistant.
Yes.
And they will show up. But we want, you have to get enough cases going. So if you just want to dabble and see, I want to try a case or two, this isn't worth it, because we spend a lot of money training you to do this system and making sure your team is competent and can get that muscle memory and can get enough inertia to make this a successful implementation. So you want to try a case or two, I'd say you're not ready to even implement custom. Don't bother, because it's just going to be something that, like, how do I do this again? Every time the patient comes in, it's like, what are we doing here? What's different? It's not, there's no value to be had from it.
Yeah. Now I'm going to throw a little wrench in this, because you were a startup. You did implement KLOwen, and I know I have some other startups that are doing it too. So can you talk a little bit to that? Because they may be starting with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 cases a month. And it is going to take a little bit of muscle memory. But I think, when I look at it as a consultant, I say, well, we should have one person dedicated to that. And it's probably the doctor learning this. So can you talk just a little bit, so that if I do have some, startups out there or doctors that are saying, oh, well, maybe I don't meet the criteria, but I'm really interested in this. I know you guys have got a solution for this too.
Yeah. And we actually have like a new grad promotion where we give you like a really low case lock for the whole first year. And so you don't have to worry about like tiered pricing or anything else. It's like, okay, you get a low locked in price. One person, or even at the busier office, we only want to train 1 or 2 assistants, so they become the experts in the office.
Yes, I love that.
And then we can come back and train the rest, or they become the trainers of the rest of the team. And they are the go-to people in the office, because you're right. If I made the mistake of, one day I did 7 bondings in an office, and every assistant said, no, I want to do 1, 2. I want to do 1, 2. So we had 7 people that did the bondings, and we made it through the day. And it was a challenging day because I was jumping all over the place trying to get, but guess what? The 3rd, 4th, and 5th bondings after I wasn't there that following day, because nobody got enough repetition, it wasn't a success. So it really is, like you said, really getting 1 or 2 people that really understands. And doctors are meticulous enough, and we have video clips of the step-by-step of everything. So if it has been a couple of weeks before and you want to just go back and watch a quick 5-minute clip of, okay, yeah, I've got it. And we now have a lot more print support to say, here's the step-by-step protocol. Yeah. But I think a lot of doctors are pretty good at that. So
yeah. And I think that's the beauty of, if you are a startup doc and you are going to be doing KLOwen, I mean, you've got the time to watch the video before the patient comes in. And then say, okay, I remember it. That's my step. Because more than likely you're doing it on your own.
I do still. I still have someone.
Yeah. And so I think what I'm hearing you say is, ideally, you want practices that are going to be committed to it. If you are going to be a startup or somebody, you're just going to have to know that you're not handing this off to the assistant that's the part-time that's coming in on the 4 hours that you're doing it. Like, right. I think as a doctor, you're committing to learning the process, so that in a year or so you're handing this off, or you're training, when you get that consistent person in, and then that this is growing with your practice as you're growing. That's kind of what I'm hearing from you on this.
It's exactly right. And I actually had a phone call this morning with one of your clients as well, who's got a brand new startup, just a wonderful person. But
yeah.
it was really interesting to hear. So he's like, he was trying to say, what I'm finding is, okay, cool. Since I don't have to do wire bending or repose, is I can actually pop over and do adjustment while my front desk is still doing the console. And so I'm able to put, because it's a quick wire change, not all these extra steps and other things. And I was like, that's great. So he's actually able to put in more production, even with his front desk staff now. I think the other thing is the delayed, we talked about, he probably won't have to hire his first and definitely not a second assistant, probably for 6 to 12 months later. Yes. Because of it. And then also the value proposition of, hey, we do custom, we actually design our braces. So we're doing something different than the 5 offices right in the area. Mm-hmm. Here's our value proposition, and giving them the tools to market that this is kind of special. We're trying to do better results, get better results with fewer touch points. You don't have to come in and see us as often, less time in braces. And so being able to say, hey, not only can we maybe generate new patients coming into your practice, hopefully elevate your conversion rate, but then also on the back end. So we've got the front end, benefits of hopefully helping with practice growth that way, but also being able to save on the overhead side by not needing a staff member as soon, or being able to stick in more production even during kind of tag teaming with the front desk. So that's been neat to see those elements, to where, again, I don't want to ever say that this is the right solution for everybody, but I think there's ways to actually tangibly see the ROI where this does potentially make sense for some of the startups out there versus, man, with Insignia, there's no way I could have done it with Insignia, just the price point, or Sure Smile with the price point. It would have been really tough for me to say, okay, yeah, I can eat that cost and I know I'm going to get enough out of it. So again, that was our thing, is this needs to be scalable within the office. So you can do it for every comprehensive patient. Not for phase 1. We don't do full. The benefit of this is torque expression. And I don't usually put in full torquing wires with erupting teeth anyway. So that's my one stock bracket option, is still my phase 1 cases.
Yeah. Yep. That's great. Well, this has been just fabulous. I think this has been such great information for everyone that's been listening. If you were to, as we kind of finish up, 2 pearls, if you were to, I mean, you've given us pearls this whole way through, but if you were to say, my parting pearls for you, my parting words, anything. And then I want you to just kind of tell us, how can, if somebody's interested, where do they go? How do they, yes, they could probably find you at a show or, online, but if you can kind of give us that too, as we're kind of wrapping up here before we head into our speed round.
Sounds good. So, we talked a lot about, I think, profitability and efficiency and all of these other things that I think we've really tried to create something that'll help practices grow, that'll be good for patients, good for staff, good for doctors. But, at the end of the day, the main reason I did this is the cases are better. When you actually control all 3 orders, it's made just for the patient. It's really about getting a direct flight to every tooth, but also getting that tooth exactly to the right destination, not where there's slop in the arch wire and bracket interface, and we're going to not get all the way there. So the fun thing to me is, as someone who really cares about clinical excellence above all the other stuff, are my cases looking better or worse? Matters to me more than am I making more money, or am I more efficient or more profitable? Yeah. To me, it's are the cases as good or better? And across the board, I'd say every one of the cases that I've seen, I would say so much better because of that torque control. Third order control it's amazing how much an impact that can really make across the board on just consistently excellent occlusion, consistently excellent smile. So this is about quality of outcome. It's not about profitability for me as the leader. The good news is we actually kind of get both, which is really neat.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably my big key takeaway. And then the other one is, change is hard. Change is hard. I moved from Colorado to Texas to this scratch start. I started a company from the ground up. My life has been not easy at all for the last decade, but it's so rewarding when you actually get to the tail end of it. And, I think I'd encourage people to reach out, not to me, because I'm way too biased. I mean, I always say I'm going to be as objective as I possibly can today, but realize that my worldview is that custom braces is the best thing since sliced bread. So I'm biased. As much as I try to take the bias out, I know that I am, but talking to some of our users who've crossed over the 500 case count mark or 300 cases. We have lots and lots of people who've done lots of cases with us. Connecting you with those people, because they're all super willing to share their experiences, I think is a much better impact on, hey, does this work? What does it do? How did it work? Because the challenge is going to be there. We're going to have to get our staffs all on board, and it's not an easy thing to implement change. But I do think it's worth it. It's been worth it for me to start the company. It's really been fun to see what's possible.
Yeah,
and,
I love that. Yeah.
And in terms of getting started, the website's probably the best quick way to get access to it, because you can go, if you go online, it'll direct you to your sales rep, and then the sales reps are the ones who really do a great job of connecting and talking in a deeper level about, hey, here's what we really need from you. This is what's going to require if you want to implement this. Hey, do you need a reference? I can get you in touch with this doctor in your region, or this doctor in your region, or this doctor is kind of describing the benefits that you're looking for. Hey, you want more work-life balance? Hey, here's a doctor who's leveraged this technology for that. Or, hey, you want to triple your practice? Here's a doctor that's tripled his practice. So all those things I think are really helpful just to kind of get that namesake. But
yeah, that's great. What's the website if people want to go to the website?
It's just KLOwenbraces.com.
Okay, KLOwenbraces.com. All righty, perfect. Well, again, thank you so much. This has been a phenomenal little chat here. So many pearls. You're just a wealth of knowledge, and I really appreciate you being on Hey Docs with me. So, are you ready to accept the speed challenge?
I am ready to accept the speed challenge.
All right. Here we go. So, describe your style in one word.
I'm going to say smart.
Ooh, I like that. All righty.
I don't know if that applies or not, but
you get to choose one word. It's your word. What are you listening to or watching right now?
Oh man, so a super guilty pleasure. I almost am embarrassed to admit it. Love Island UK on Netflix is like The Bachelor, but an even raunchier version, and it's so much more entertaining. But it's kind of my wife and my way to connect at night, because I work so hard. I work so many hours, and it literally is like brainless thinking. So if you start watching, but there's like 50, 60 episodes per season. So it's like sucks you in. So Love Island's my guilty pleasure right now.
I love that. And I think that's great. All right. How about, what do you do just for you?
Man, since we lost our son, these 12 years ago, I honestly say it's like getting to spend time with the family, carving that time out. That's how I recharge. We're coming up on this fall schedule, and I'm gone pretty much 8 weekends in a row. And so at the end of those, I start feeling just emotionally drained, and just getting to drive the kids to school in the morning or take them swimming at the neighborhood pool on the weekends. As much as it's not just for me, because it's with them too, that is probably the biggest thing that I look forward to. And it's the biggest thing that recharges me. So
I love that. I love that. All right. Finish it up here. What's your hidden talent?
I'm a pretty good singer. I'm a pretty good singer.
Oh, that's great. We'll have to get in front of a mic sometime. And
sounds good.
And then to finish us up, what is your big, hairy, audacious goal for 2022, 2023?
I'd say going out further than that is, my dream is to be able to have this bracket system make lives better for patients, not just in the US, but third world. I think the neat thing about the way we've approached custom is this is something you can set up in every country. A 3D sprint ray printer doesn't cost very much. You can set it up anywhere in the world, and you can turn around cases like that because the brackets are kind of there in demand. And, so to be able to say that, hey, braces are a better experience, a more approachable experience for more people around the world in the next 5 to 10 years, That's probably the thing that really gets me the most excited, is to have like a global impact more than just I love being an orthodontist. It really is so rewarding. I mean, it puts a huge smile on my face every day. I get to work with patients. But when I started developing the system, this what I think is an elevating process, it really got me to be excited about not just impacting oral health of my own local community, but just of the whole world. And so that's I think it is just really being able to see this in multiple countries, helping people that that I never would have been able to help before.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And we're in a great profession, and, just, to be able to know that we really, truly you are impacting and changing people's lives. I mean, the first thing that everybody sees is your smile. And, just how cool
100%.
that is. We're pretty darn blessed, for sure.
Without a question. Yeah, without a doubt.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for being a part of Hey Docs. This was just a great episode. And I'm just so thankful for you taking time out of your very busy schedule to give us some really great insight into KLOwen. And again, thank you.
No, thank you too. I mean, you've helped me immeasurably, both with my practice, and I think you just bring so much to the profession as well. Just really focusing on these startup practices where it is a unique set of challenges. It is a unique set of items to navigate, and to be able to have a specialist that's really entrenched and really knows the ins and outs of that, I think is a huge advantage for orthodontics as a whole. So, thanks for everything you've done for me too.
Well, thank you. All right. Well, until next time.
Take care. Thank you, Joe.